On August 12, 1898, during annexation ceremonies at Iolani Palace, two figures stood on a platform before an international gathering. Sanford B. Dole and U.S. Minister Harold Sewell exchanged treaty ratifications annexing the Hawaiian Islands to the United States, or so it appeared. But was it really a treaty of annexation? And did Hawaii really become a territory of the United States? What is a treaty? A treaty, in its simplest terms, is a contract or agreement between two nations. Under international law and practice, a simple three-step process is all that is required for a treaty to be legal and binding. First, a representative from the executive branch of both governments sign and consent to a written agreement. This signed agreement is then submitted to the two respective countries for ratification or approval. In the United States, that approval is based on a 2/3 vote of the Senate. With both countries having consented to the terms and conditions of the agreement, all that remains to consummate the treaty is for both countries to exchange copies of the ratified agreement. That agreement, under international law, is now considered a bona fide and legally binding contract or treaty. In 1849, a treaty of friendship, commerce, and navigation between the United States of America and His Majesty Kamehameha III had been concluded and signed at Washington. Ratification by both countries were exchanged in Honolulu on August 24, 1850, and the treaty was enforced from that date for the term of 10 years and further, until either party gave notice to the other of its intention to terminate. By the late 1800s, the Hawaiian Kingdom enjoyed the distinction of being a member of the family of nations, having entered into treaties with 20 foreign powers. Immediately following a treasonous attempt to overthrow Queen Liliuokalani in January of 1893, enemies of the kingdom, now calling themselves the Provisional Government, departed for Washington, D.C. to sign a treaty of annexation with the United States. Their sole intention was to achieve annexation at any cost. However, before the United States Senate could ratify the proposed treaty, newly elected President Grover Cleveland, confronted with the facts of the overthrow, withdrew the treaty from further consideration and vowed never to allow the Treaty of Annexation to be resubmitted. Having failed at this first attempt to obtain a treaty of annexation with the United States, the Provisional Government on July 4, 1894, declared itself to be the Republic of Hawaii and maintained its opposition to the restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom government, as called for by President Cleveland. On June 16, 1897, with Grover Cleveland now out of office, a second effort to annex the Hawaiian Islands to the United States was attempted. A treaty was signed in Washington, D.C. between representatives of the self-proclaimed Republic of Hawaii and the newly elected President of the United States, William McKinley. The following day in Washington, Her Majesty Queen Liliuokalani submitted a formal letter of protest to President McKinley, asserting that this proposed treaty of annexation violated the existing Treaty of 1850 between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the United States.
Because said treaty ignores all professions of perpetual amity and good faith made by the United States in former treaties, it is thereby in violation of international law. Therefore, I, Liliuokalani of Hawaii, do hereby call upon the President to withdraw said treaty from further consideration. I ask the Honorable Senate of the United States to decline to ratify that treaty.
Word of what had transpired in Washington soon reached the islands. Anticipating that the U.S. Senate would reconvene in December to consider this second attempt at annexation, an aggressive campaign was initiated, intending to fortify the Queen's second letter of protest. On September 6, 1897, James Kaulia, president of the Hawaiʻi, the Hawaiian Patriotic League, gave a stirring speech before thousands at Palace Square in Honolulu. He said agreeing to annexation was like agreeing to being buried alive. He asserted that a mass refusal by the people could prevent annexation.
Let us take up the honorable struggle. Do not be afraid. Be steadfast in aloha for your land and be united in thought. Protest forever the annexation of Hawaii until the very last patriot lives.
On petition to the President, Congress, and people of the United States, otherwise known as the Monster Petition, was read and approved at this rally, asking that no further steps be taken toward the ratification of the treaty. The men and women of the Hawaiʻi, through the efforts of many loyal and dedicated Hawaiian subjects, launched a full-scale petition drive that lasted approximately 2 months. They went from island to island, from shore to shore, leaving no stone unturned in their efforts to document opposition to the proposed treaty. The petition was printed in both English and Hawaiian.
We, the undersigned, native Hawaiian subjects and residents who are members of the Hawaiian Patriotic League of the Hawaiian Islands and other citizens who are in sympathy with the League, earnestly protest against the annexation of the Hawaiian Islands to the United States of America in any form or shape.
By November of 1897, they had successfully gathered the signatures and support of over 21,000 patriots. In a joint effort, the Hui Kalai'aina also gathered through their petition drive nearly 17,000 signatures. Together, there were over 38,000 signatures, representing 95% of the native Hawaiian population. James Kaulia, David Kalaukalani, John Richardson, and William Auld traveled to Washington to deliver the petitions to the United States Senate. In December, while they watched from the gallery, the text of the monster petition was read on the floor of the Senate, and the signature petitions were formally accepted. As a result of these protests from the Queen and her people, the United States Senate failed to obtain the required 2/3 vote as mandated by the U.S. Constitution to ratify a treaty. By March of 1898, the Treaty of Annexation was dead. But expansionists in the United States Congress, led by Senator Morgan, would not let the dream of annexation die. Within days, they devised a plan to bypass the requirements of their own constitution in an effort to annex Hawaii.
The gentleman from New York objects to the motion.
The Hawaii Annexation Treaty lags in the Senate. The number of votes needed will not come forth. The advocates of the scheme are now preparing to resort to a joint resolution, which may be put through by a simple majority in each House of Congress. In other words, if Congress should strictly obey the Constitution, annexation could not take place.
In March of 1898, they introduced Joint Resolution Number 55 to provide for annexing the Hawaiian Islands to the United States. The joint resolution, otherwise known as the Newlands Resolution, was then passed by a simple majority in each House of Congress and signed by President McKinley on July 7, 1898. This was the document presented by U.S. Minister Harold Sewell to Sanford Dole at the annexation ceremony in August of 1898. Dole responded, "I now yield up to you, representing the government of the United States, the sovereignty and the public property of the Hawaiian Islands." For the past 100 years, it was assumed that Joint Resolution 55 possessed the power and effect of a treaty. However, according to international law and practice, it did not. Moreover, under U.S. constitutional law, a joint resolution does not have the power to extend beyond the borders of the United States. Without a treaty of annexation, American sovereignty cannot exist in these islands. Nothing has legally transpired which could affect the lawful existence of the Hawaiian Kingdom and its subjects. There was no annexation.
Another man broke his word. Another man broke his word. Oh, another man broke his word. And the truth could not be heard. Somebody's gonna have to pay. Oh, somebody's gonna have to pay. Somebody's gonna have to pay. And it looks like you and me. When I see that rain fall from the sky, oh, when I see that rain fall from the sky, oh, when I see that rain fall from the sky, I get down on my knees and I cry. Another man broke his word. Another man broke his word. Oh, another man broke his word. And the truth could not be heard. Another